Welcome back to another episode of Retro Reviews. In this episode, we take a look at the black box version of baseball for the Nintendo Entertainment System. To start off these reviews, I like to share what I experienced during the actual era since I recall the late Atari and NES eras quite vividly. My earliest memories of a baseball game begin with Atari's similarly self-titled affair. Although, it is worth mentioning for the purpose of this review, though less relevant in modern times, the games actually bore the Real Sports moniker, and boy, is this review a real bore if you hate sports games. Both NES Baseball and Real Sports Baseball are built on the same foundational ideas, a simple top-down interpretation of baseball. One of my childhood friends, Lucas, participated in some of the earliest known nostalgia as he had an Atari 2600 on his main TV in the year 1986, even though his NES sat collecting dust just in the other room. Truly ahead of his time! On a particular day that I was visiting Lucas, he handed me a stiff, rubbery joystick with a red squishy button and challenged me to a game. I will never forget the excitement of running these stick figures towards other stick figures to get an out. The runners sort of controlled like gigantic adventure dragons. Looked like them too. Lucas also reintroduced me to several other Atari classics during our times hanging out, such as Demons to Diamonds, chess, and even Yar's Revenge. Tragically, my friend Lucas died at the age of 10 due to an auto accident, but I wanted to share these times with you to honor his memory. It's hard to imagine how it's fair or even right that I've gotten so much more life than he did, but I was honored to spend some of my most cherished video game sessions of an epic era with him. Rest in peace, my friend. The footage you'll see here is from the Atari Flashback Classics for the Nintendo Switch. In this compilation, both the 2600 and 5200 version of this game are available and shown here. This is an extremely fun baseball title. While the graphical stylings are nothing to be too excited about, I will say that going back and trying to hit this tiny, pixelated ball with a single pixel-wide bat is dang near impossible, and I have no idea how the heck we did this back in the day. For this review, I played the NES baseball title first and then dipped back into the Atari version. I did this because I felt a kinetic energy between the two games. It was clear that Nintendo took its inspiration from what Atari had done the previous year with Real Sports Baseball. And so my gut feeling was, wow, this baseball game on the NES is kind of terrible, 1 out of 10, and to some extent as a game in 2022, that review still rings true, but there are a cavalcade of baseball titles you can play even in the retro format, and almost all of them are better than baseball for the NES. However, retro reviews are not as straightforward as they seem due to adjusting for the era and competition of that time. You might fire this game up on a whim on your Nintendo Switch online service like I did and think, well, this sucks. And to be honest, nowadays this game is pretty bad. The controls are pretty unresponsive half the time. It doesn't even feel like you are controlling the character at all. I couldn't even really tell if I was pitching or batting at one point because the response is so very sluggish. Unless you have specific nostalgia for this game, it would be hard to recommend diving too deep into this one, but I definitely recommend giving it a spin so you can see what the game brought to the baseball genre. You can also see where these modern games have taken their inspiration. It's odd to think of Nintendo as a pioneer in the sports genre, but with baseball, they definitely ushered in a new, better era of baseball games. Nintendo would continue to release realistic-style sports games throughout the 1980s, several through black box releases such as tennis, golf, 10-yard fight, volleyball, and ice hockey. The last two serious Nintendo sports releases were in the year 1988, Ice Hockey and World Class Track Meet, which is also known as Stadium Events. Later, in the early 1990s, Electronic Arts, or EA, took on bringing the most realistic sports experiences to home consoles. At this point, Nintendo pivoted, shying away from releasing sports titles, but started a whole new Mario-themed lineup with the 1995 release of Mario Tennis on the N64. This is also available on N64 Switch Online, with the expansion pack. And we haven't seen a realistic sporting release since. I think most of us are relieved by this as we enjoy Nintendo for its characters, not its sports games, and the merge of the two has created great experiences like Super Mario Strikers, Mario Golf, and most recently a dive back into quasi-realism with Switch Sports. To determine my final score for this game, I also consulted as many critical reviews of the era and modern ones that I could find. Most reviewers complained about its terrible controls even when it was released then. Taking all of this into account, I give baseball for the NES a black box out of 10. It's actually 7 out of 10. It was simply an average game, even in its era, and while baseball was groundbreaking as a game, it never really got past being more than simply average. Fundamentally, the Atari 5200 version of Real Sports Baseball matched or exceeded the features of the NES baseball title. Now, I would like to say that, overall, I gave it a 7 out of 10 simply because you take an average score of 5 and you add the 2 points for innovation. So that's where we got 7 out of 10. But I hope you all enjoyed this, and next up on Retro Reviews is Donkey Kong, and I hope y'all are having a great day.